navigate by voice as well as dictate by voice, and that's typically not a good answer for most doctors. Although I'll tell you, I saw a product demoed at HIMSS that actually is a more natural dictation tool, and it's an add-on, but I haven't heard anything more about it since then. I think we'll get there eventually, but for the time being, dictation is problematic. Now, having said that, when you handwrite and it goes into a progress note, or you dictate and it goes into a progress note, that's not structured data. And you're going to have to explain that to the doctor so they understand that they still have to get the structured data element in. And best practice, medical best practice says you want to have both. You want to have both the structured data, and then you want to use the individual note that's going to be handwritten or dictated to provide additional texture and detail to that progress note or to the chart. So they need to be able to do both things, but they're going to have to learn what has to be structured and what can be the enhanced note part. So there is a learning curve, and this is a point that is going to be, I'll show you in a second, the objections area. They're going to object because they have heard from one another how hard it is to learn to use an EHR. And they have heard, all of a sudden I can see a fraction of the patients that I used to be seeing. And so it's an uphill battle. A big piece of your job, becoming the trusted advisor and the implementer of their EHR software, is coming up with a transition process that gets them over that hurdle as quickly as you possibly can. And that's a big chunk of what I do as a consultant, is working directly with the physician and then working with the software vendor to put together that process, that program that says, you're going to do some homework. Here's some web-based tutorial material, and you've got to do it. And the software company says you need to do it before the implementation. And as the consultant, I'm going to make sure you're doing it. I'm going to call you. I'm going to swing by the office. Did you do it? Show me where you did it. So that they have the pre-training, and they understand that all of this is done to shorten and compress that transitional period where they won't be able to see 40 patients a day. You know, where they will have some mistakes and some errors and some frustration. You want to shorten that period to the smallest possible amount of time. So data entry, spend a lot of time consulting to them here. Managing the sales cycle. Let's do this. Let's take a quick break because you guys have been in here a long time. If we can come back inside of 10 minutes, I'll finish up on this, show you some screenshots of the tool. You can ask some questions, get another cup of coffee, and we'll come back at 11:05. Thanks. No conference. Let's talk for a second about the sales cycle, because this is really, really important, obviously, and it's really, really different probably from what you've experienced before. For those of you who have not been sort of adjacent to the healthcare space or have not worked with a physician's office, it is very, very difficult depending on how you came to this prospect or lead. If you are doing the equivalent of cold calling, this is going to be a series of efforts in order to try to get the first meeting. And the gold standard is to have a face-to-face meeting with the physician or the practice administrator / manager, or both at the same time. That is the first step on the road to actually selling an EHR implementation. Okay. And you may have to make a number of calls, but I recommend getting your face in front of these people some way or another and not cold calling, because when you're cold calling or you're reaching out to them, you're putting yourself right in that ocean of pharmaceutical representatives and device representatives, and you're just another unknown entity. So I'm really big on, and I've done some of this with Ingram in their boot camps, I'm really big on the marketing component of what you have to do to pre-sell so you can get in and sell. So if that means events, if that means getting up in front of a group and speaking about how to do this effectively, or getting up in front of a group and talking about some of the features of the software you're going to be reselling, you need to do that. The group that was up here at the front during the break, we were talking about how important it is, and it's not on here and it should be, get yourself an advisory committee. Approach your own doctor and tell them you need some help. You need someone with a clinical background who can be your quality assurance in terms of medical terminology, understanding what's going on, and helping you learn, being your mentor. And then expand that group. Ask that doctor for another doctor's name. They talk all the time. There are very few local chapters of these certification bodies or specialty bodies anymore. Once upon a time, they used to all have local chapters, but now these individual ambulatory physicians don't have a formal network like they once did. So their networks tend to be informal. So leverage that, use that. Build a little 3-person, 3-doctor advisory group, and then meet with them on a regular basis. Most doctors have a flex day or times during the week that they reserve, that they don't make any appointments. They catch up on paperwork, they do some work in appointments, they leave that space blank. Find out when that time is, because that's your best shot for getting a little bit of time with that individual physician. A lot of docs still take Friday afternoon or Friday morning as their flex time. If you can find 2 or 3 that are using the same flex time, then you can start, maybe sponsor a breakfast meeting with them, and you buy breakfast and you talk to them as a group, or you take one of them out for breakfast, or you get them out on the golf course. But cultivate that personal relationship so they can help you learn the vocabulary, can help you network through their network and their Rolodex, and it makes a huge, huge difference, because the first milestone is getting the meeting. The second milestone then would be getting them to agree, to the point that you've got something to propose. You've got a product or a service to propose. And remember, as a reseller, you are both fish and fowl. You are selling a service and a product. And you want to have your value proposition locked up and really well thought out about both sides of that equation before you start making up a proposal. Like I said, you've got one-stop shopping in your back pocket as a great advantage for these guys. These guys just want somebody to take care of it for me, and they want someone they can call so that if one of the PCs goes down or the printer's not working, they know they can get someone on site to take care of that issue within a certain window of time. And so package a set of services. The best thing you can do is to structure an ongoing relationship with a physician's practice. So you put them on a small retainer. It doesn't have to be more than $300 or $400 a month. It doesn't even have to be that much. But tell them every other month one of your techs is going to come out and defrag the hard drives on all of the systems. Going to do a basic network check so that they're in there, they are part of the flow of work, their faces and names and the company name is familiar, and you are part of the team. That is invaluable. So think hard about the service element of what you have to offer so that you can stay engaged with these practices. Once you've got them to the point where they're ready to receive a proposal, you want them to agree to how they're going to receive those materials. And there's no substitute for delivering anything face-to-face. I try to, when I've got stuff to deliver, unless it's just a little piece of, here's an article I thought might interest you, unless it's something like that, I typically try to do face-to-face when I can. And then agreement to the follow-up call. Once you get the face-to-face, your goal is getting the next meeting and ultimately getting the demo. Now, let me tell you some of the hard truth about why. Did I mention selling to doctors is different? The hard truth about why selling to doctors is different. When you get that first meeting, you need to be prepared. You are probably not going to have more than 15 minutes. And if you do not make the best possible impression in those 15 minutes, in the first 3 minutes, you're not going to get the 15. You're going to be out of there. So this is why you need those mentors, those doctors who are advising you, so that you can get confident enough that you can demonstrate your competency in the first 30 seconds of speaking to that physician. And you're listening, you're hearing the cues, but you can come out of the gate and say, first and foremost, Dr. Smith, thank you for giving me your time today. I'm going to be super conscious that you have patients that you need to see. Here's what I've got and why I think it's important to you. But first, I want you to tell me about what keeps you up at night. And get them talking. Once you've got them talking, then you can get the 15 minutes. And if you're really, really extraordinarily good listener, you might get more on that first visit. But don't be surprised if all you get is 15. And remember, all you're trying to get in that first sales call is the next meeting. Just get the next meeting. And you might have to go off and do some things a little bit on spec, you know, look at this or look at that, or go out and research the answer to that. Here's the thing that's keeping me up at night. How do I do this and this and this? You may have to go off and make some calls or research that. That's okay. That's a great way to get back in front of them. Always getting the next meeting is the goal, and getting to the demo. But you got to be prepared with the value proposition out of the gate, which is why we put together this blueprint for you and why we put together the blueprint tool for your use. So you'll be prepared when the door opens. It's only going to be open for about a nanosecond, and you got to get your foot in it. Here's some do's and don'ts. Do be thoroughly prepared. Do make sure that you are articulating how mindful you are of their time. Remember, 40 patients a day, 40 patients a day, 40 patients a day. I heard an MGMA assessment that said if it requires an additional 30 to 45 seconds per patient to do something electronically during their transition time, you're effectively going to add 3 to 4 hours onto that physician's workday in order to get everything done they need to do. So be mindful of that. Listen actively. That means listen with a still mind. If you are listening and preparing the next thing you're going to say, you're not listening. Most people don't understand how to do active listening, and this is really important because if you listen actively, that doctor or that practice manager is going to tell you what you need to know to close that deal. Ask questions. Keep them talking. Try to think from the perspective of the physician or the practice manager. This is why when we expand our staff and we look for people who can go in and be really effective, I have talked to some pharmaceutical reps and some of them are okay at this, but I'm more interested in getting former practice managers because they understand what the day in and day out of running that business is. Think like a consultant. Your role is to be a problem solver and a teacher. That's why if you can get them to tell you in that first 15-minute message what really does keep them awake at night, go off and get the answer. Or it doesn't have to be the answer. There are very few silver bullets in this world, but get them a variety of alternatives. And say, here's what I found for you, Dr. Smith, because I know this is a concern for you and I want to help you solve this problem. And then set up the next contact. Do not call the physician by his or her first name until they ask you to. This isn't a big deal for everybody, but for those that it is, it's a big, hairy deal. And please don't call them doc. Again, unless all the staff calls them doc, and on your third or fourth visit, but don't take any liberties like that initially. There's something else here that should be on the slide, but it's in the toolkit tool itself, the roadmap tool itself. Doctors are taught to be appropriate. They get this in medical school, so they have a keen sense of what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. And by appropriate, I mean off-color, religion, politics, etc. Okay? Doctors may not have the best bedside manner, but they are almost never inappropriate. You need to take your cue from that. Don't go there. Don't be inappropriate. Don't tell a female doctor how attractive she looks today. Don't treat a female doctor any differently or like she's not a decision maker in the practice. Just be appropriate, you know. Don't refer to the PAs, the certified nurse practitioners or certified nurse midwives as mid-levels. They hate that. They worked very hard to receive the licensure and the certifications that they've got, and they feel pretty passionately about the distinctions between them. So the biggest issue is not that you're not referring to them, it's not mid-levels. The issue is you're lumping them in with the other mid-levels. And they get kind of testy about that. So if you've got a PA, refer to them as the physician's assistant or the PA, or you've got a nurse practitioner. This is just sort of business 101, reseller 101. I learned this a million years ago when I worked for digital equipment. Don't ever criticize